Hey guys, today I just wanted to talk to you some more about patch bays and actually show you a patch bay that I worked with recently at the MCL Grand Theater in Lewisville, Texas. The MCL Grand Theater is a lovely, beautiful theater, and it's great to work in if you get the chance. And let me show you the patch bay here. This is a tiny telephone patch bay. It's a tiny telephone or TT Bantam cables and connections are actually a version of a tip ring sleeve connector, and it's sort of smaller than 1/4 inch but larger than the 1/8 inch headphone connectors, and you can actually fit 96 tiny telephone Bantam jacks on a single rack unit patch bay. So you'll see these in studios where there's just a lot of connections that need to be made. So on this first patch bay, we have the top row, which is mic lines. You can see that microphone inputs label at the top there. Now let me show you where some of those mic lines are. You can see the mic lines here, and they all have their different number, and that number shows up on the patch bay. That means there's a balanced cable going from these microphone inlets to the matching jacks on the patch bay with the same label. The yellow row below the microphone input row is the console mic inputs. Each one of these jacks is connected to one of the microphone inputs on the mixer. It makes sense for these two rows to be right next to each other because it makes sense that you would plug a microphone into one of the microphone inputs on stage. That would lead into the patch bay on the mic lines row, and then that would automatically be connected to the row below it using normaling contacts, and the row below that would be the microphone inputs for the mixer. So if both of these rows were normaled together, that microphone that you plugged into the socket on stage would automatically run into one of the microphone inputs on the mixer. Here's some patch jacks that are labeled Feeds from Black Box. This theater actually features a black box theater in addition to the main theater, and these jacks allow us to make analog audio connections from one theater to the other. The next set of jacks you see here are labeled return or tie lines downstage right and downstage left. Remember those stage boxes that I showed you earlier with the microphone inputs? They also have connections that are intended to allow you to run signal from the mix position back to stage. That's why they call it a return. So the mic is connected on the stage, which sends signal to the mixer, and then you can return signal back to the stage using stage returns with these jacks to those stage boxes. This is useful when you're wanting to send signal back to stage for a powered speaker that's on stage, or a headphone box that's on stage, or any other device that needs a line level analog signal on stage. Here we can see two sets of 4 jacks labeled multi. These are mults. You send signal in on one of those jacks, and you get 3 copies of that signal on the other 3 jacks. You can then use patch cables to patch those copies out to wherever you need them in the system for whatever purpose you'd like to use it for. Here's some more microphone inlets. There's a green section here that says line inlets. This is associated with more input jacks in the same stage box we looked at earlier, but it's implied that these are to be used for line level signals. However, there's really no difference between the mic lines on stage, although they did use a different jack in the stage box, so you could plug in either an XLR connector or a 1/4 inch connector if you wanted to. You could still use these lines for microphone level signals. Here you can see I've got access to the outputs of all 4 wireless microphone receivers right here on the front of the patch bay. Using patch cables, I can connect those to any channel on the mixer that I want them to show up on. Here we have some patch jacks that are labeled feeds from truck dock. These are actually connected to a stage box that's by the loading docks. Now you might wonder why you need audio lines out here. Sometimes there might be a broadcast truck that needs an audio feed out to a satellite transmitter, or there might be a recording truck outside that needs these audio lines. Or maybe there's just personnel back in this area that need to be able to monitor what's happening on stage, and you can send them a feed. You can see here a pair of patch jacks labeled FX left and right. These are the left and right stereo inputs to the effects processor in the rack next to me. I can send signal to the effects processor using patch cables. You can also see a pair of jacks labeled CDR2. These are the left and right stereo inputs to the CD recorder. This orange section is labeled console line inputs. These jacks are connected to the plus 4 dB line level inputs on every channel on the mixer. There's a row of jacks here labeled console direct outputs. Now these are associated with jacks that are right next to the inputs on every channel of the mixer that allow you to take the signal that was input into that channel and send it directly out. This is useful when you're making a multi-track recording of the performance and you want everything on separate tracks, and it's also useful if you have a separate mixer for doing monitor mixes. Here you can see the master left and right stereo mix outputs from the mixer, as well as the mono sum of those two left and right channels. And you can also see the aux or auxiliary outputs. Here you can see the 8 group outputs from the mixer. This section is labeled DSP inputs, that's digital signal processing. These jacks lead to a digital signal processor, which feeds the amplifiers for the main front-of-house speakers. Here's a set of jacks labeled monitors, A through F. These jacks lead to amplifiers, which are intended to be used for passive stage monitors on stage. Here we see effects left and right again. The 2 jacks underneath this label are connected to the left and right outputs of our effects processor. Here we have a label that says from CDR, left and right. This is the stereo output from the CDR recorder. The next label is CD, left and right. This is the left and right output of a separate CD player. And here we see video, left and right. These 2 jacks are connected to the output of the DVD player. Below that, you can see a section labeled Console Stereo Inputs. These are connected to the stereo inputs on the mixer. Finally, I just wanted to show you a real-world example of where to use an insert cable. Here in this rack, I've got Behringer compressors. On each one of these compressors, I've put an insert cable, or what you might call a Y cable. The white end of the cable, or the end labeled tip, is connected to the input of one of the compressors. The red end of this cable, or the end labeled return or ring, is connected to the output of the compressor. Then, to apply the compressor to any of the channels on the mixer, all you have to do is find the channel you'd like to compress and put the other end of this cable into the insert jack associated with that channel.